Pakistan is headed towards what experts are referring to as food insecurity, equivalent to that of a country at war. Pakistan stands at 99 out of 121 countries on the Global Hunger Index, indicating a serious level of food insecurity. What have we done to mitigate the effects of the food crisis that we are undergoing and also heading towards? Are we delivering on at least a few of our policy objectives to try to provide some semblance of food security to those affected?
Despite the fact that there is enough of food produced overall. Now the question arises that how, despite having enough of food, as we see, the majority of the world population, including Pakistan, is facing food hunger. We need to look at the question of the system of food, that how the overall global food system works.
Do you think our current food security situation it poses an additional security threat to Pakistan during these trying times of rising militant attacks?
Even in today's Pakistan, the narrative of security has been broadened, as I may refer to the National Security Policy document that came out in 2021, that when we talk of security in Pakistan, the government has rightly redirected the focus of policymakers that you cannot talk of security in pure traditional security sense, like militarily, they're having the strengths in terms of militarily.
Assalamu alaikum and hello, I am Faryal and you are watching New Wave Global. Come this September and Pakistan is headed towards what experts are referring to as food insecurity, equivalent to that of a country at war. Now, the grim scenario is likely to worsen due to the ongoing cost of living crisis, the political and economic turmoil, as all of this continues to curtail people's purchasing power in different ways. Every day, people have to make tough choices between putting food on their tables or paying the month's bills. How is anyone supposed to pick one and forego the other is a valid question. Food is the most basic existential human need, and being denied access to this right is particularly culpable. A very high concern hunger hotspot, Pakistan stands at 99 out of 121 countries on the Global Hunger Index, indicating a serious level of food insecurity. The World Food Programme report of July 2023 reveals that a whopping 36.9% Pakistanis are food insecure and another 18.3% are facing severe food crisis. On the integrated food security phase classification, Pakistan falls in phase 4, indicating an acute level of hunger. I welcome here with me Dr. Neelum Nigar, Director, Center for Strategic Perspective at the Institute of Strategic Studies, where she oversees research and advocacy on Pakistan's non-traditional security challenges, including food insecurity, climate change, and poverty. Thank you very much for making time for us, Dr. Nigar.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Food insecurity in Pakistan is expected to worsen September onwards for reasons that are quite obvious. The UN 2022 report titled Hunger Hotspots, Early Warnings on Acute Food Insecurity cautioned over a year ago of what was to come. What have we done to mitigate the effects of the food crisis that we are undergoing and also heading towards? Are we delivering on at least a few of our policy objectives to try to provide some semblance of food security to those affected?
Thank you, Faryal. I think it's very important to discuss this issue, which has impacted almost everyone from different walks of life, right? So in Pakistan, if we look at food security, I, as an academic, always unpack it while looking it into a broader concept of the whole system, that how Pakistan has come to this position that we are looking at food security from a policy lens, from an academic lens. So as you mentioned in the beginning, that not only in Pakistan but worldwide, there are statistics coming that over 1 billion people are facing hunger as of today, right? And that despite the fact that there is enough of food produced overall. Now the question arises that how, despite having enough of food, as we see, the majority of the world population, including Pakistan, is facing food hunger. So for that, as I said, as an academic, we need to look at the question of the system of food, that how the overall global food system works. Now, as you know, that Pakistan, as living in a country, in a developing country, our economy is attached to the global economy. So whatever happens there directly has an impact on our lives, on our economic system. So when we look at that broadly, the I'll say the neoliberal system has almost, in a sense, failed to address this global food hunger in its truest sense. Now, for that, by looking at hunger index of countries, as you referred to the global hunger index, while we look at Pakistan and many developing countries along the line, many in the African countries and many in the South Asia, including Pakistan, Pakistan is facing acute hunger. Right, and we see as of now, when you talk about how and how we have we have reached to this position, is we need to look back to our history, that how this overall trajectory has been taken overall in the world, and particularly in Pakistan, that we face hunger and food security at the moment. Now, let me take you back to some of the statistics that is coming while we look at the history. Now, there were different eras in the post-Cold era, and then when we had certain financial crises, the 2008, 7-8 crisis that has deepened the overall economic system worldwide. Now, that needs, we as an academic, as practitioners, or as scholars, we need to look into the basics of this hunger. We cannot just rely on that the current discourse on food security is very much needs to be taken very much deeply into the structures of the economy that we are pursuing. There's a lot of structural issues in countries like Pakistan, where people, despite having a lot of food being produced, there is a lot of population who are disproportionately impacted by this
Absolutely.
Overall food crisis.
Right, that's
right?
very right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that we have seen just recently, after the world experienced the COVID crisis, how the developing countries like Pakistan were at the verge of collapse, if I can say it in its truest sense, that how we were being left to our own, that how the government is going to mobilize resources for the people so that they can be able to bring food to the table. And when you talk of how and what the government is doing, we've seen that during COVID crisis, that the government of Pakistan was able enough to mobilize resources for its people, for the vulnerable people of Pakistan, through its social protection program, which is basically the Benazir Income Support Program, and obviously with the support of its partner organizations like World Bank, like other agencies, world agencies, who contributed significantly to the efforts of government of Pakistan in order to deal with the kind of
we will be coming, so we will be coming to that later. From the security point of view, another way of looking at the food crisis is considering food insecurity a non-traditional security threat. The connection between food insecurity and traditional national security in terms of its impact on the performance of soldiers and warriors with their meager salaries and limited purchasing power. This is something which is also being highlighted by food emergency experts. Do you think our current food security situation, it poses an additional security threat to Pakistan during these trying times of rising militant attacks?
Yes, obviously, because when we look at the issue of food security, there are two schools of thoughts who talk on the issue of food security, that how poverty has particularly impacted the overall crisis in countries like Pakistan. So if there are not people are not able to purchase food, their purchasing power is very limited in order to purchase the basic food that they need, then obviously there's curtailment of other economic activities for them. So how it impacts the overall crisis in countries like Pakistan is very much, because Pakistan, as we talk of today, the security, even in today's Pakistan, the narrative of security has been broadened, as I may refer to the national security policy document that came out in 2021, that when we talk of security in Pakistan, the government has rightly redirected the focus of policymakers, that you cannot talk of security in pure traditional security sense, like militarily, having the strengths in terms of militarily, but you need to broaden the concept by focusing on other non-traditional security challenges or threats, which ultimately have greater impact on the overall security situation of Pakistan. And that's what we saw in the national security policy, that document that is very much kind of a blueprint for the country, for the government in Pakistan, that how we should focus more on human security, more on economic security. These two were being considered as the pillars of the overall security dynamics in countries like Pakistan, that you cannot achieve the overall comprehensive security without securing the lives of the ordinary people, making them able to have their life with dignity, with grace, with prosperity. It is entirely impossible. Now that needs to be questioned, and people are criticizing that, how it is to be operationalized, how resources are needed to be brought to make it more comprehensive, is I think a $1 million question at the moment that you see Pakistan is facing at the moment.
I'm sorry to cut you short. But we will be coming to that, and like you just said, that I'm sure food insecurity does multiply stress on active duty personnel, and it diminishes the well-being among the service members to quite an extent. Last year's floods, which caused compounded damages and economic losses of around rupees 30 billion to the agriculture sector, livestock, and affected food production and availability. Swathes of farmland were wiped out, aggravating the wheat crop crisis. It is sad that Pakistan has become a net wheat importer from an exporter, as it has been importing nearly 3 million tons of wheat every year to meet the needs. What's your take on this current wheat crisis, and are there any chances that we are going to be able to overcome it anytime soon?
I think, as you said, that Pakistan since beginning, since our childhood, we are saying that Pakistan is an agrarian economy, a country where agriculture sector has been considered as the backbone of the country, of the economy. But sadly, what we see is a shift in the overall components of the economy, be it the industry, be it the agriculture, or other main pillars of the economy. That's because, as I said in the beginning, that how the overall shift in the global economy is very much evident in the overall global economy. That how, because of the issue of the global economic model, because of the neoliberal economic model, how the shifts in the agriculture sector, not only in the agriculture sector, but in the trade sector, in the regional connectivity, how that has been more or less linked to that these developing countries like Pakistan need to need to be focused more on being considered, as I need to put it more explicitly, that how this shift in the global economic model has made countries like Pakistan dependent on the imports from the Western countries. Like we, being an agriculture country, we as you see that in 1990s, when the World Trade WTO, under their WTO agreements, when agriculture sector was also being brought under the WTO agreement. So under those agreements, it was being said that the governments are not allowed to subsidize agriculture sector. Now we see that despite the countries like Pakistan, developing countries, not subsidizing the agriculture sector, because we, under the WTO convention, we cannot do that. But we see, as of today, the developed countries are still subsidizing their agriculture sector. Now that I think is the main primacy of the shifts in the overall production capacity, agricultural production capacity of country like Pakistan, that we were being dependent on imports from the north, so that the needs of developing countries can be met through import of even basic foods like wheat. And that's what we are seeing at display in the moment in Pakistan. Now, what the government is doing, the government is doing the issue, the policies are right at the moment. What the government can do is how it needs to broaden the per acre yield of the productivity. Now, for that, you cannot do that without doing research, that what seeds are needed so that the yield of your agricultural productivity can be enhanced. For that, research is much needed in the agriculture sector also. Now, in that situation, I think the Ministry of Food Security and Research Center is at the right position to re-emphasize that how we need to shift our focus from more being dependent to our indigenous model, which was very much our own. It was our own, that we were very much indigenous since the beginning. But since the shift in the global economy, we are now being left dependent on imports, like the very basic food like wheats. Absolutely. So that, I think, very important for countries like Pakistan to re-emphasize the shift, redirect the shift from being import dependent to remodeling our mode of production in sectors like agriculture sector, which is very much possible as of now, if we can Absolutely. Do that.
So what we are talking about here is access to food, let alone nutritious quality food. Now, this brings us to the added issue of nutrition insecurity and malnutrition. We have child stunting rates, which are one of the highest in the world. We have very high infant mortality and morbidity rates, and they're all directly or indirectly linked with food insecurity. What is suffering here is the country's valuable human resource, if you look at it from that point of view, that we are compromising on our human resource. Now, this also contributes to low human development index, Do we also take into account the issue of nutrition insecurity in our public policy making when we are talking of food insecurity?
I think because when we talk of food security, the very basic concept when we define it is that a country is secured in terms of its food when all the people have access to sufficient, nutritious, safe, and they are able to maintain a healthy and active life. Now, that's a basic definition of food security, right? You cannot have food security without ensuring nutritious food and a healthy diet to all of its population at all time. Now, that's a very, very tall ambition for food security to achieve in terms of, yeah, in countries like Pakistan. Am I audible to you? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Am I audible?
Yes, loud and clear.
No.
I can hear you.
Yeah. So in that sense, I think the discourse on food security internationally and within Pakistan also is shifting. That how we are able to provide nutritious, safe, and a healthy diet to all of its population all the time, given the situation that we are at the moment in terms of our economy, in terms of other things. Now, again, I would again refer to that this discourse of food security has come from this discourse on food security needs to be broadened more in terms of how we are able to ensure nutritious food to our population. In that sense, I would say that if we talk of food security today, we should we should we should focus more on how people should have the right to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced domestically and through sustainable methods. Right? Now, that's an academic debate that people are doing. That the current model of food production is not sustainable in order to ensure food security, nutritious also, healthy also to its people all the time. That is not sustainable. That we have seen that this current model of food system, the global food system has failed to deliver the food security worldwide. It though has benefited few few of the people who are able to do that, but majority of the people, if we talk of today, as I said, over 1 billion people today is facing hunger, acute hunger. Now, that means us as an academic, as living in the policy circles, that we need to redefine the discourse on food security. We cannot say that you should continue with the same system which has repeatedly failed to deliver in terms of securing the safety and healthy life of people, and then we do some cosmetic changes and say that now we would be able to have a secure population. That cannot be done. And that even in the Western scholarship that is coming up is saying that even ecologically, this method of food system has failed. It has failed our ecology. It has failed our overall biodiversity and our people in particular. So in that matter, we need to question, as an academic, I'm questioning even the very definition of food security for countries like Pakistan. We cannot afford to ensure food nutritious. I think it's a very tall expectation from
in fact, I think it's more challenging in Pakistan.
More challenging.
And to have
yes, and that I will re-emphasize it.
Are not aware of what a balanced diet means.
Yeah, and that I think is that if we need to make a sustainable food production, which is domestically produced, which is sustainable to even our ecology and our rivers and our overall biodiversity, that in the long run would be in a position to ensure that we would be in a position to provide nutritious, healthy, and a balanced diet to our population. So I think, as I said, our policymakers need to uh, to at least to make themselves ready for the challenges of today. That the challenges of today cannot be dealt with the policy prescriptions of 1960s and 70s or 80s.
And that is,
That is not.
if at all, food security is a priority with our policymakers and with
Yes,
our.
yes,
That's the
if
first
at all,
question.
and yeah, and I'm seeing that we deal we almost on daily basis we interact with policy makers, with practitioners, and it is something very unfortunate that they still are not ready to the challenges of today, the challenges that we even after going through COVID situation and many floods that we have, not even Pakistan, but we see it in Morocco, where there were a devastating kind of earthquake in Libya. Now we still are not in a position to learn and and question even the very discourse. See, if we are not ready to even question the discourse on certain, be it food security, be it on trade, or be it in overall global food chain. When we talk of global food chain, now that I think cannot even ensure food security or food production.
That's very, very true. And I think that's what my next question is about, that the public probably also has a role to play, because these are very tough times. And as we head towards some of the toughest, we're also heading into the festive season in Pakistan, a time of lavish feasts and superfluous wedding banquets where people overindulge. And worse, there's lots of food wastage. Now, this is a crass display and squandering of resources that could be used to feed hundreds, if not thousands, who go without food day after day. And also keeping in mind that those attending to these feasts, the waiters, the servers, the helpers, the chefs, most of them probably fare from the food insecure part of Pakistan. And this makes it worse. Now, this is the time when I think people also need to play their role beyond whose responsibility it is to fix the food crisis, beyond laws and legislatures. We need to start realizing that it's not just the state's responsibility. We have to play a role too. So, what mechanisms do you think we can put in place to ensure that the public can participate to feed the hungry? Do we need some type of campaigns, feed the hungry campaigns? Or do you think that people need to contribute to fast track government's efforts? What do you think we should do in this kind of a scenario?
See, I agree that as a society, in countries, mostly in South Asian countries like Pakistan, there's a lot of display when it comes to food during festivities, during other ceremonies. Now, I think again I would say that there again comes the role of the state. That even if the state is not able to um, to maintain what is needed to be done at the state level. And obviously, once it is done, once it is ensured at the state level, I'm sure that would automatically translate to the individual levels, to their behaviors, to their overall conduct of their life and their lifestyle. See, just take an example of water, another crisis that countries like Pakistan is facing. That we see that water is not it's not an issue of water crisis, but it is an issue sufficiency of water crisis. It's not issue of sufficiency of water crisis. Rather, it's an issue of how efficiently you are using the water, right, in countries like Pakistan. So by linking that, it also displays in our overall conduct of life, be it with food, be it of others. But then again, it is the state that needs to ensure the kind of situation that is needed, how these festivities needs to be curtailed, how the display of the haves and haves nots should be curbed through state interventions. You cannot expect people to behave in a certain way, which is which I think is very rarely displayed in countries like Pakistan, unless there is a state which ensures that if you go beyond what is prescribed, you will be punished for that.
Yeah, but
Now,
that,
again, that is the state. And I think I'll always refer to the role of state, which is very important in bringing a change in the overall conduct of people.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. But in Pakistan, sadly, it's mostly the state representatives who break the rules, who break the laws. We know they are the one who have those lavish, extravagant weddings. So in that particular scenario, it becomes maybe a little more challenging for us to develop this type of environment.
I think you're right, because if they are displaying the same kind of attitude towards festivities or towards whatever display they show, that automatically you cannot expect from the ordinary people to behave in a certain way, which I think we put a lot of expectations from the ordinary people that they should behave like this, they should do this. And even the population issue of population in countries like Pakistan is also being held, the ordinary people are being held responsible for that. I think the focus should be on the state, that it should reassert itself in terms of situation like this.
Our climate vulnerability due to the global climate change, it enhances Pakistan's food security challenges. Is enough being done to develop climate change resilience in farming, crop production? Do we have a protection mechanism in the face of climate-induced calamities, purely from the point of view of our agriculture and the crops that are damaged in such calamities?
We just recently, in terms of climate change, the government just recently launched its National Adaptation Plan, right? Which I think was broadly focused on how, other than the other sectors, how agriculture sector needs to respond to the issue of climate change, how we need to make it more resilient in terms of food production, in terms of providing overall livelihood to the people who are attached to the agriculture sector. I think there's a lot that has been done in terms of making it resilient to the climate change vulnerabilities. But I think there's a lot that yet needs to be ensured in terms of making it more resilient, while saying that how we have made a transition from to a green initiative, kind of initiatives in terms of agriculture sector. That I think is a lot. But again, there comes again the question of not just the will, but also the ability of the government, the needs of a transition. There's a lot of need of finance also, that you also see currently at the UN General Assembly, that the debate is going on, that how governments like Pakistan, our caretaker Prime Minister, also put forward its point of view that climate finance is one of the important area that Pakistan is seeking at such highest forum, that the government needs to have the resources at hand in order to deal with resiliency when we talk of climate change vulnerabilities. Pakistan being one of the lowest emitters and among the 10 countries, is facing the highest vulnerability, as we faced it even in 2002 floods. And again, I think it will be repetitively happening, as we've seen it in other parts of the world also. But I think there's a lot that needs to be done. The plan is there, the policies have been made, and they have been redirected also. But again, how it is executed, how these initiatives will be implemented sectorally, with the right sectoral policy, that needs to be done, I think, more urgently as of today. And when we talk of hunger, agriculture, the productivity of agriculture sector plays an important role in that. So it needs to be resilient to the vulnerabilities of climate change. for countries like Pakistan, you cannot live without that. The vulnerability is very high when we see it today.
Absolutely. Researchers also say that food insecurity can lead potentially to a full-blown conflict, and it incites extremism as well. From the direction that we are headed in, can food emergency develop into a law and order situation in Pakistan, considering that we are already grappling with lawlessness?
I think it has already been displayed. You might have seen the kind of footings coming on screens that people, there's a lot of chaos being happened during these, when the government was providing free atta schemes to the people who are in need of having a bag of flour or atta was a situation of life and death for them, and that we see how the law and order situation was being disrupted due to these. So these are just simple snapshots of how this food crisis can create more such crises in the times ahead. And I'm sure, because as we see, poverty leads to many other crises, and poverty and hunger breed more such crises in countries like Pakistan. They get prey to the crimes that we have seen in
Crime,
countries.
there's civil unrest, obviously.
Civil unrest, crimes, and many other things that are being attached to it. And we already are witnessing it in Pakistan because of the economic crisis that is going on, and how people are making, how difficult it is for people to make their both ends meet in order to have a simple, to bring a simple food, one time meal on the table. And that is, obviously you're right in saying that it has already created a law and order situation and conflicts and crisis for Pakistan, and I'm sure it needs to be done on war footing.
And my last question, and if you could kindly just keep it short. The top 5 goals which are envisioned in Pakistan Vision 2025, it's the country's development blueprint. Out of those, one goal is to protect the most food insecure segments through effective measures. And I know you've already spoken a lot on the government's role and what is being done, but do you see us achieving this vision by 2025?
It is by 2025.
Yeah,
Impossible.
that's what the Pakistan vision.
Yeah, the vision, Pakistan's vision 2025, and how we are able to. I think it's very impossible because Pakistan is already behind by 13 goals of the SDGs. We are not able to achieve the goals even by 2030. If I may go ahead of 2025, we're not able to do that. Countries like Pakistan, it's impossible to achieve that in terms of creating a secure and healthy population. Because of the situation that I talked about, the economic crisis, the food crisis, and the overall, because we are attached to a global food supply chain, the geopolitical situation that is going on around the world, the conflicts of states within, and the external shocks, they have disrupted the global food supply chain, and that has created issues of food security in Pakistan as we see today. And I'm sure, and I can see that how this goal is impossible to achieve even by 2030 for countries.
That's precisely how it appears to be. The common Pakistani, working or unemployed, young or old, doing one job or multiple, is struggling to put food on the table. Challenges are many, since we have to produce more food. Then we have a burgeoning population with less cultivable land, and that too under increasing pressure from a non-conducive climate. Dr. Nigar, thank you for your valuable input on this very crucial existential issue that I think warrants our constant attention and effort. More on this later. Thank you for watching. Allah Hafiz and goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.